Hello! I have not thought about anything I'm going to say today, so this is going to be really interesting. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm repping the merch today because of what I'm going to talk about. And Burlesque is big. Have you ever wondered what it's like to put on a new musical? Well, I'm going to try and answer that today. If you don't know me, my name's Jess Folly. I am currently starring in Burlesque the Musical. I play Christina Aguilera's role, which is called Ali Rose in the show. And I'm also a composer on the show. So basically I write songs for it. I've been on this project for about 2 years now, I think. I initially started as a composer on the show, which I can talk about that journey in another video if you guys want to hear more about my initial involvement on the show and how I kind of came to find myself in that position where I was writing songs for the show before there was even talk of me being in it. That's a whole another story. But today I'm going to be focusing on putting the show together. So because the show is completely new, the process started off in workshop form. Now I'm pretty sure there had been workshops workshops before I even came on board. But as a performer, I did 3 workshops for the show. The first one I did was a week long, and it was way back in where are we now? We're 2025, so 2023 I think I did the first workshop for Burlesque. It was a week long. It was my first time coming in as an actor on the show. It was my first time coming into an actor as anything, and at this point I didn't know necessarily whether I was going to be playing the role indefinitely or whether I was just going to be playing it for this kind of go. So it was kind of my audition in a weird way. That workshop was my audition for the show, which is not entirely conventional, but hey, here we are. So I went into that workshop and it was basically a table read for a week. We didn't put anything on its feet. It was just, we sat around a table with the writer, Stephen Antin, and the producers and the director. And there was like 10 of us, maybe. Maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe there was a bit more. Between 10 and 15 of us cast members sat around a table basically reading through these scenes, and it was bits of the show, and there were like a few songs. I think at this point I had 1 song in the show, so which was Got It All From You, which is the first song that Ali sings in the show. It was the first song I wrote for the show, and it's Ali's kind of mantra, I guess, going through the show. So I actually walked into my first day in that table read, and one of the producers turned around to me and was like, Before I'd gone into it, I was like, I'd been told it was very chill, and it was all chill, and like we're gonna kind of like stumble through, because the very first day we did a table read of the act 1 of the script, and I walked in and I sat at my spot that said Ali Rose in front of it, and someone came up to me and went, "Jess, would you just mind like singing through the show?" And I was like, Yeah, okay. Yeah, why not? In this industry, I feel like you just say yes to things even if you can't do it. And that's kind of how at least I do it. I just say yes and then figure it out. So next thing I knew, we were singing through the show, and I sang every song. I was lucky that I'd like prepped. So I sang through the show. It's actually really fun. It was really, really cool experience, and I had the most fun that week. It was really great. Moving forward to the next workshop, this was like the main workshop, I feel like, for Burlesque. It was in September of 2023. God, this has been a while. Wow. And we had like a full cast for the first time, rehearsing and basically staging the first act. Again, that was like really good fun. It was definitely more intense. We were trying to get act 1 on its feet in like 4 weeks, but from a completely new show, and there was a lot to do within those 4 weeks. The director and choreographers and the writer everyone was experimenting basically. So I did that with some amazing people, Jordan Luke Gage being one of them, Courtney Bowman, Amy Thornton, Earl Gregory, really lovely people who did that workshop. Actually, a couple of people, Jess Qualter and Holly Ann Lowe, and there was a few people from that cast that actually came with us to Manchester and Glasgow the year after and ended up being part of the original cast. So we did that workshop. At the end of that workshop, we did a presentation of the first act, which was so much fun. You know, the first time we'd seen a version of the show like on its feet. We did that and had like some people in to come and see it. And then fast forward to, I don't know, maybe like February 2024. I might have got that wrong, but around beginning of 2024. We then did another like 4 days or like 3 days even maybe of workshopping the script with the writer and a few people. Again, it was back to like a table read situation. Michael Mather was there, who played Jackson with me in the show. At this point, I think I had a few more songs in the show, so we were workshopping those. Stephen was rewriting stuff and experimenting with his vision of the show. And then we started rehearsals in April 2024. Yeah, April 2024. Come into rehearsals, day one. Original cast of Burlesque. It was wild. I almost want to find like photos of it to show you. Oh, I should say as well, actually, before this, I'd started going into dance rehearsals with Robin Antin, the creator of the Pussycat Dolls, and we'd been working on dance stuff in preparation for rehearsals to start. So I probably started that, I don't know, March time, just in preparation to kind of get my body ready for what it was about to go through. Then actually, before we get into rehearsals, we had like shoots, like artwork shoots essentially for the posters outside the theatre and for social media. Todrick obviously came over, and Todrick had been over for a little bit anyway because obviously he's a writer on the show. I think it was actually the Friday before we started the rehearsals on the Monday. We had a shoot for all of the artwork with the principal cast members, and it was good fun. Again, I will insert some stuff here from that. Then we started rehearsals on the Monday, and the very first day, again, we had a table read. I will insert a clip here from that. I don't know how long it is, so hopefully that will be long enough to insert a clip there. We were all sat round, everyone was reading through the script, it was really good vibes, and yeah, then we cracked into rehearsals. We did, in total, I think it was 5 weeks of rehearsals before we went to tech. I'm going to say 5. I'm going to be confident. I think it was 5. I think for the first 2 weeks, we mostly spent sat in this room, chairs out, learning the score, learning the music. I mean, I was renowned for never really sticking to what the music on the page was anyway, but we learned it. It was a pop show, leave me alone. We basically spent the first 2 weeks sat in that room with our amazing musical director, Chris Poon, and our amazing assistant, MD, Caitlin Morgan, learning the show, basically. There's a lot of music in this show, so it was time consuming. So while this is happening, the show is still being developed, still being worked on, still being progressed and experimented with, but we're obviously learning it as that's happening. So after the first 2 weeks, we moved more into choreography, a lot more of that. They started staging numbers, started staging. We'd get like a, see if I can put up an example. Maybe I'll blank out the actual contents. An example of what our call sheet would be. So what we'd get is every day we'd get a daily call sheet the night before, and it would tell us what we were doing the next day. So it might be that we were working on Act 1, Scene 3, and then there was a dance call for Tough Lover, and it would say who was called in each rehearsal. So we'd know what we were doing the day after, and gradually throughout the weeks we started putting the show together. Quite often the ensemble would have a dance call whilst principals would have script calls, and we would be learning our scenes whilst the dancers were dancing. And then we'd come together and they would slot in the principal members into the numbers after. Sometimes that wasn't always the case, but sometimes that would be the case because they were trying to be as obviously time efficient as possible, and we were definitely stretched for time. It's a new show, getting it up on its feet in time to put it on stage in Manchester is obviously a big task, so it never really feels like you're prepared. I feel like I was still learning stuff in tech, everybody was still kind of figuring it out even when we were in shows. So if you're doing a show and you don't feel completely prepared, I think that's pretty normal. So once we've put Act 1 together, we would do something called a stagger through. So A stagger through would basically be say the first time we like put the whole act together and try and like run it through with all the transitions and everything. But it would basically mean, you know, we might need to stop a few times to like move set. Basically a very low pressure run. We tend to do that before we did like a run through, which I really liked because it gave us an opportunity to like feel it through. Feel what it feels like to run the show or run the act or whatever section we're doing. So we tended to do, I think we did like a stagger through of Act 1, ran Act 1, then we did Act 2, we did the same thing with Act 2, and then we started doing it with the whole show. We would do that. I think we spent quite a lot of time on Act 1, and I remember Act 2 feeling like, oh, we're doing this quick. So I think I remember having like maybe like a week and a half to learn Act 2, like it was something like that. And Act 2, if you've seen the show, or if you can imagine the show, have you seen the film? Act 2 is extremely like intense for Ali. I love doing Act 2 because it takes so much energy. We learnt all the numbers for Act 2, learnt everything, and then did a stagger through, I'd imagine, of Act 2, and then did a stagger through of the show, and then did a run of the show. And then what would happen is the producers would then come in to the rehearsal and watch us do a run of the show. This is weird actually, as I'm scrolling through my photos to like remind me of what we did. I just remembered I had my 21st birthday during rehearsals. So like we were like rehearsing in the day, and then we all went to the pub after and like had some drinks and everything for my birthday, which was very cute. So the other thing that we would have during rehearsals was costume calls. Obviously, because it's a new show, they were actually designing the costumes while we were putting together the numbers. So what would happen is our director would stage something and be literally writing down like, oh, we need this prop, or oh, we need this as part of the costume. It would be being sent to the departments as it's happening. So we would then also have like fittings during rehearsals where we would go into a separate room with our costume designer, Ryan Dawson-Light, who's amazing, and all of his team, who are also incredible, who we would then go and have these fittings with for the costumes and start kind of piecing together what the costumes are for the show. This is all while we're rehearsing. And the other thing that we actually have a screen in the show on the back wall where there's often projections of us up there. So we would have like these video shoots during rehearsals as well, where we might be called one day to go to a different building and film something for the screen, which was also very cool. Again, I will insert a video here. I think this is from a song in Act 2 where Ali is now the star of the Burlesque show, and she's confident and really comes into her own. And through looking at my photos, that was the end of our rehearsals. Yeah, then we went to tech. Damn. So obviously throughout all of that, we've just been putting the show on its feet. Then we actually headed up to Aylesbury for our tech period. Well, for our first tech period, for like a bulk of our tech period. Our tech was kind of weird. I don't know how normal it is to go to a different place to tech the show before you go to the theatre you're going to. But I think that our producers knew how long it would take to tech the show. So we went to a theatre in Aylesbury and started teching the show there. Tech is a wild old thing. I have not experienced tech before, other than like dance shows when I was younger, which is obviously a very different thing. So I knew what tech was, you know, but I hadn't experienced it in a professional setting for myself. She's wild. I didn't hate it, to be fair. Like, it wasn't bad. It's just a weird experience. You go to the theatre. Sometimes they'd be really long days. Sometimes they'd be a bit shorter and a bit nicer, but sometimes it'd be quite long. This is the weird thing about tech, right? It's dark in there all day. It just kind of feels like you're in this box for a day. It's strange. I guess when you're doing a show, you have that, but you have it for like 2.5 hours. Whereas in tech, you're in costume from like 10 a.m. or like midday through to between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. depending on your schedule for that day. You're in costume, you're in hair and makeup, and you're like on stage just like standing. Although one thing that I will really give credit to the team working on Burlesque for is that they would do something that's called dry teching before we came into the theatre. So quite often, you know, the amazing team working on the show would come in and do the really boring part of tech, is the easiest way to say it, which is basically where our associate choreographer, Libby, who's a dream, would stand on stage in like my place, and the lighting team and everyone, I'll insert a picture for what our tech, like what the auditorium looked like. This is how many people were working on that show to create the like tech for it. So we were actually lucky in that sense because it meant that we didn't have to do so much of that when we came in. Obviously there's always a bit of that where you're stood there for like 10 minutes while they're like lighting you, but we could make more progress because they were dry teching before we got to the theatre, which was really helpful. So we would come in, get into hair, get into makeup, get into costume, and then we would just gradually make our way through the show. But sometimes it would take like a day to do a number. Like I think Welcome to Burlesque, I think when we first started, I think Welcome to Burlesque took a while, and I'm not on until after then. So I was like kind of chilling for the beginning of tech. I was like, oh yeah, I just sat in the auditorium like, this is great. You're all like stood on your marks and on your numbers, getting lit, and I'm just chilling, probably eating food. So I actually had, the beginning was chill for me, but then it very quickly became not chill. And I remember actually my least favourite part of tech, when it started to hurt for me, was during Act 1, I wear pretty comfortable clothes. I literally wear my jeans and like I wear honestly what I would wear on a normal day. So I wore that for the first act. So for a good like week at least of tech, I was in jeans and a t-shirt. Then I was very quickly not in jeans and a t-shirt for the second half of tech. And all of a sudden I found myself in latex for days on end. Not as fun. So yeah, I think, like I said, I think the weird thing about tech is it's so like dark and you kind of feel trapped in there for like a long time, and you come out of the theatre and it's dark outside, and then you get up and then you go straight to the theatre, it's dark in there, and then you come out, it's dark again. You know, I think that was probably what was a bit strange about tech. But our Aylesbury experience was so fun. Like honestly, the best part of the process in terms of how much like fun we had. And we were all staying in this hotel, and we were basically next door neighbours, and we'd go back to the hotel in the evenings, sit in the bar and chat and eat food, and that was a really like fun part of the process. And I don't think that's necessarily a conventional part of putting on a new show, because like I said, I don't think going to a random place to tech a show is what usually happens, but I think it worked really well for us because it gave us like a really good time. We had a really good time there, so we did that. Then we came back from Aylesbury and we actually went back to the rehearsal studio for a few days where we had our sits probe. Sits probe was, maybe this was the best part of the process actually. Sits probe was sits probe is amazing. I had never done a sits probe before, and everybody would say to me, Jess, you're gonna die when you do this. It's the first time, if for anyone that doesn't know what a sits probe is, it's the first time the actors come together with the band and everybody sings through the show as one. Obviously, throughout the whole of rehearsals, we had a piano and a drum kit sometimes, but that's it. It was the first time we had all the horns, everything together. Oh, it was amazing. And we were all like stood with mics and just sang through the show for a day. Well, it wasn't even a day, for like half a day. I think they also used the couple of days before that to do some cover rehearsals. So obviously our amazing understudies and covers and swings got an opportunity to rehearse the show as well before we got to Manchester. Then we did our sits probe, and then it was basically time to go to Manchester. So got to Manchester. I think we had our sits probe on the Friday. Then on the Sunday, I think I went to Manchester. Yeah. Back in tech. We hadn't finished teching the show when we left Aylesbury. We still had like a week and a half. I don't think quite a week and a half, maybe like 8 or 9 days, I think, left before we opened when we got to Manchester. So we got there, we used that week to tech the rest of the show. We didn't finish teching the show until it was either the day of or the day before. But what I do know is that we didn't do the finale until the day before. I know that. There was definitely the last number that we did in the show, we didn't properly stage until the day before we opened, which was scary. Obviously now we're at the Manchester Opera House. We know the show, kind of. Things are still changing, things are still developing, but that is just an ongoing thing with a new show anyway. Still changed, like now it's a new show. So we do our tech period in Manchester, and then I think we did maybe like 2 dress runs. I can't remember whether it was the first run or the second run, but there was one time where we did a dress run and we had the only show stop, to be fair, that we've ever had doing. Oh no, that's a lie. That's a lie actually. We had a show stop, but it was before the show. It's the only show stop we've had mid-show was during a dress run. And if you don't know what show stop is, you can watch it in one of my other videos, what things I learned doing my first theatre job as someone who didn't go to drama school. But I will give you a brief description of it now. It's basically when, because of a safety or technical issue, the show has to stop, your stage manager will walk on stage and be like, everyone get off, stop. They won't say it quite like that, but that's basically what happens. So we had this happen during a dress run, and I can't remember whether it was the first time or the second time. I think it might have been the second time. But no, I think it was the first time. On the day that we opened the show, day that we actually opened Burlesque for the very first time, world premiere, we had a dress run in the morning. I remember it now. Okay, ignore everything I just said. So we did a dress run the night before we opened in Manchester, world premiere, first ever performance. We did a dress run the night before, and we did a dress run the day of. But on the dress run of the day of, we got halfway through Act 1, and literally slap bang in the middle of Act 1, we had a show stop. The show had to stop. We had to pause. There was a big delay. Meanwhile, we're thinking, we opened the show in like however many hours, and we had to not finish running Act 1. I think our director turned around and was like, we know Act 1, you've done Act 1 more times than you've done Act 2, let's just move on, let's just start the show from the interval and do that instead. So I remember that. You're basically doing a 2-show day the day you open, because you usually do a dress run in the morning, and then we opened the show in the evening, and that was a big old weight off everyone's shoulders that we actually opened the show. Then we're kind of in it. Then you just get up every day. And during this first run, it was classed as previews. I don't actually know whether the second one is classed as previews. I think it might be. I'm not sure. But especially this first period that we went to Manchester, we went for 4 weeks. We did like 3 weeks of shows. And those 3 weeks were like definitely classed as preview weeks. So what that means is we were still working on the show in the day, and then we would do the show in the evening. So we'd be in rehearsals from like midday, working on stuff, changing stuff, doing stuff, and then we'd do the show in the evening. Unless we had a double show day, then we probably wouldn't rehearse. We'd just obviously do the shows. I remember a specific scene changed, and we had to like relearn the lines for it and stuff during the run, which was, honestly, it keeps it kind of interesting. It can be a lot, but it was definitely fun. And we had our gala night, which I guess is kind of a press night, but because we were in previews, it's not really a press night, because a press night usually means you have your previews, then you have press night, and then the show's open. But because we still weren't technically like open after, I guess they called it a gala night. We had people come and watch the show from the industry and from America, and there was like a big drinks after. But the funny thing is that people always forget is that the drinks are not for the actors, because my God, especially not the people who have to sing, because Lord knows I wasn't going to be drinking at this gala night. All of us are like, chin chin, should we go to bed? Because we have to do a show the next day. So, but I remember that being a really fun night. Everyone gets dressed up. We were at the Ivy, which was right opposite from the theatre in Manchester. It was great. I will insert some pictures of the gala night here. And then we were doing the show. Our process was weird because we had 2 months in the middle that we had off while they made some changes and developed the show further. Then we went back in September and we had a week of rehearsals again, like refresher rehearsals. And again, I think we had like 1 day of tech the second time, which was crazy. Then opened the show in Glasgow and then went back to Manchester, and then you're just in shows, you know. There's still stuff happening in the day sometimes, like cover rehearsals, or if they needed to work on a specific number, they might bring people in. You know, there's things that still need to get done, but you're basically in the gist of shows and you get into a routine. That's like an overview. If you want me to go into more detail about specific parts of the journey, do let me know and I can make a video on like tech or on like, you know, I can make a more specific video. But I think for anyone that's like curious about the general journey of a new show from rehearsals to the stage, that was at least the overview of what we did. Basically it. Hope you've enjoyed. Hope you found this helpful. Everyone's experience, I'm sure, is different. So this isn't Bible. This was just what we did from rehearsals to putting the show up in Manchester for the first time, and my kind of like step by step of being on the show. As a performer, like I said, as a writer, there were different things that I had to do, but as a performer, that was kind of the gist. Make sure you comment and subscribe and let me know what other videos you want to see. I will see you next week. Lots of love.